Thank you, Kat, and thank you all for attending today. I'm Nicole Jarvis, Senior Manager of Programs at Cancer and Careers. I'll be your host today for the 60-minute webinar. Now, before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items related to accreditation. And for those of you who don't require this information, please bear with us. I promise I'll be as fast as possible. Today's webinar is accredited for CEUs by the California Board of Registered Nursing, New York State Education Department State Board for Social Work, and the National Association of Social Workers. The following steps apply for those requesting CEs from the accrediting bodies I mentioned. First, you must call in individually. Participants who listen in on someone else's line will not receive credit. Second, you must complete and submit the evaluation and post-test, as well as receive a passing grade on the post-test. Following today's session, you'll receive an email with all of this information. The follow-up email will be sent by 5 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, and certificates will be emailed within 4 to 6 weeks. Also, please note that the planners and presenters for this program have not disclosed any pertinent financial relationships or conflicts of interest, and that no commercial support was provided for this program. Thanks in part to a generous grant from Genentech, Cancer and Careers has created the Balancing Work and Cancer webinar series to provide patients, survivors, and healthcare providers with concise, targeted information to help you understand a variety of issues that surround balancing work and cancer. Building an effective profile on the professional website LinkedIn is becoming as crucial as crafting a good resume today. We often hear from cancer survivors that after going through a cancer diagnosis and treatment, they're ready for a change. LinkedIn can help making finding a new job or career path easier. But remember, it's designed not only to help with job hunts, but also to manage your career identity and to build it. In addition, for some people, it can also be a great way to start reconnecting to the work world after time off for treatment and recovery. To take us through this topic, I'm thrilled to introduce Julie Jansen. Julie is a speaker, trainer, coach, and author who's helped thousands of professionals find success and satisfaction at work, as well as find work that is gratifying. She's written 2 books, I Don't Know What I Want, But I Know It's Not This, a step-by-step guide to finding gratifying work, and You Want Me to Work With Who? 11 Keys to a Stress-Free, Satisfying, and Successful Work Life, no matter who you work with. But most important to us, Julie is one of the original coaches at CAC, helping patients and survivors with their individual employment challenges and hardships. Following Julie's presentation, there will be time for you to ask questions. So now I'll turn it over to Julie. Julie?
Thanks, Nicole. So when we designed this webinar, we kind of are covering all the bases with not knowing exactly where all of you are as far as your understanding and familiarity with LinkedIn. LinkedIn does tend to change elements of it, its format, its interface over time, and we never really know when something is going to change. So we've updated this to reflect the most recent changes that have occurred on LinkedIn, but basically it's a pretty intuitive and practical, easy-to-use site, but it does require some practice. So I'm going to go through some of the history and basics of LinkedIn and then go through all of the features, and then, as Nicole said, we'll open it up for questions. So what is LinkedIn exactly? It was actually launched back in 2003. It was launched as a very small IT community, and for whatever reason, and nobody really knows why, it has become the world's largest and most dominant professional social network. So as we speak, there are about 500 plus million users. Only about 100 million, which sounds like a large number, are actually active on LinkedIn. It is very different than Facebook, and often when I'm doing this kind of webinar or a workshop, people will compare LinkedIn to Facebook. It is quite different from Facebook from the standpoint of it is only used for professional networking, and it also a huge component is employers posting jobs, which is why if you are in job search or thinking about looking for a job, it's a really great place to have create a compelling profile. LinkedIn allows members to create what they call a profile, and it's essentially not the same as your resume looks, but it does have a lot of the same information that would be on your resume. And it also, a huge element of it is having connections, as it's called, to other people. So LinkedIn is basically, let's talk about the connections first. So your network on LinkedIn, again, called connections, it's made up of first-degree connections, second-degree connections, third-degree connections, and then also fellow members of LinkedIn groups. So we'll talk about that in a few moments, but there are lots of different groups that are very specific to functional areas, jobs, industries, interests that you can join. And when you join those, you have access to all of the people who are members of that group, whether it's only 40 members or thousands of members. So a first degree is someone that you are directly connected to because either you've accepted their invitation to connect or you have sent them an invitation to connect. And you'll see a first-degree icon next to their name in any search results and also on their profile. So you'll know that you are directly connected to that person. And you can send them a message directly on LinkedIn, and it will go into, depending on their settings, go into their email inbox. A second-degree connection is someone who is connected to your first-degree connection. So, again, you'll see a second-degree icon next to their name in search results and on their profile. And you can send them an invitation by clicking on the connect button on their profile page, which is where their photo is, or by contacting them through an in-mail. And we'll talk about an in-mail. Not everybody has some in-mails they can send, but if you have more in-mails if you have a premium membership, and that's a paid membership. And, frankly, I'm not a big fan of needing to pay for a premium membership on LinkedIn. And then there are the third-degree connections. This is all very logical. These are people who are connected to your second-degree connections. So you'll see that third-degree icon next to their name. And if their full first and last names are displayed, you can send them an invitation by clicking connect, even though they're a third connection. If only the first letter of their last name is displayed, you can only contact them through an in-mail. You can't connect with them. And then, as I mentioned, the fellow members of your LinkedIn groups, these people are considered part of your network. They're not necessarily first, second, or third connections, but you can contact them by sending them a message on LinkedIn directly or through a group, and you can invite them to connect. And then any of the LinkedIn members who fall outside of all the categories I just listed, you can contact them, but only through what's called an in-mail. So next, how does LinkedIn actually work? So if you're actually actively looking for a job or you want to raise your online profile, then LinkedIn is really useful because LinkedIn is one of the first places that a recruiter or an HR professional will go to or Google to see your social media activity. More than 94% of companies actually use social media in different ways for recruiting. I'm having trouble with these. The reasons that employers use LinkedIn to fill positions, there was a time where there were only search firms, and search firms are very costly. There are still search firms in business, but they tend to be used for very hard-to-fill positions or very senior positions. So a recruiter can actually go onto LinkedIn and tap an enormous candidate pool. If you remember that I said that there's about 100 million people who are active on LinkedIn and another 500 million that are on LinkedIn, so they can access as many candidates as they want using their software to screen and scan and find people who have the specific experience that they want. So overall, it enables them to lower their recruiting costs overall. So now let's just get to how do you get started. I'm going to assume that many of you may already have a basic profile on LinkedIn, and some of you may not. So as obvious and basic as this may sound, the first thing you want to do is go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn.com, as I mentioned, basic membership is free, and create your profile. So you can go right on LinkedIn, and it'll be sort of a condensed view of how the professional world will see you. And LinkedIn is very specific about the categories, so there's not a huge amount of room for creativity from the standpoint of being able to make up categories. You kind of have to fill in the information in the categories that LinkedIn has outlined for you. So it'll ask you for an email address, and that email address will be the one that will be used to create your profile. You'll get a link that's emailed to you once you set it up, just to confirm that you are now a member of LinkedIn. And this part is really pretty easy to do, and you'll have to identify a password. And LinkedIn will ask you for a backup email, and I do highly recommend using it'll help you signify which is a primary email to use, and then having a backup email just in case. Then you really just want to start adding connections. Connections are crucial to using LinkedIn and an enormous part of being able to do research on companies or industries or people. And so, however, adding connections should really be a strategic process. So that said, and also LinkedIn has this feature where they'll prompt you to search for connections by crawling your email, but you do have to give them access for that, and it isn't necessarily something that I recommend. I recommend skipping that step and adding connections individually rather than crawling your email. So how do you actually connect with people on LinkedIn? Well, the first thing you can do is just, search for someone. I'm going to look for Nicole Jarvis, and I see that she pops up, and she works for Cancer and Careers, and I'll just click the connect button on her profile page. You can do a search and then click connect once the person shows up. You can search your email address book to find contacts, and then there's something called a People You May Know page that will pop up almost every time you go on LinkedIn, and it'll show you all of the people that potentially could be connections for you, and you can connect on theirs. And then there's, of course, a mobile website and an app where it operates, essentially the same way as the other methods. So there's thousands of LinkedIn groups. It is not productive or recommended that you join a lot of groups. I mean, I remember being on LinkedIn. I've been on it since 2004, and I did what everybody else did at first, which is just joining a bunch of groups that had any relevance to, coaching or human resources or training or speaking, and then I quickly realized that I didn't really do a good job with the due diligence, and that these groups weren't helpful for me. I wasn't participating in discussions, and it just became overwhelming. So there's two ways that you can find groups. You can search for groups by name or keyword, or you will get recommended groups by LinkedIn. They'll send you groups that'll say, we recommend that you join these. If you want to search for a group by a name or a keyword, so say for example, I searched career coaching, I would just type in career coaching and click search. And then on the search results page, you'll click the groups tab. And then if you want to browse the groups that are recommended for you by LinkedIn, you'll click the work icon that's in the top right hand of your LinkedIn homepage and select groups from the menu that appears. So to decide which ones you should join, you just want to click the group's name to view the It's About page, and that information about this group is found on the right-hand side, and you can read about the group. You can also, the other feature that's wonderful about LinkedIn is you can set it up so that LinkedIn will email jobs to you on a regular basis that align with your keywords and your experience. So while I've been in my own business for 17 years, I still get jobs and that could be relevant for me if I decided to go and get a job, which I doubt I ever will. But it's really interesting for me to read those and see the connection that LinkedIn makes to my keywords. So they'll email you these jobs on a regular basis, and you can receive email alerts for any new jobs that are posted on LinkedIn that match your general search criterion. And you can set up that email alert by going to and I know you're not going to remember all this, but the Help Center, I'll repeat it a few times, is fabulous. They've really improved it. You can search for a job on LinkedIn, and you can click Set a Job Alert and select how often you want to receive these alerts about new jobs. And these alerts can be sent on a daily basis, and they can be sent on a weekly basis to you. So you're not scrolling. And speaking of the Help Center, it's very robust because LinkedIn, as I mentioned, is constantly changing features. And that's you'll see my profile is most of the examples in this webinar. It's really a good idea to know how to access the Help Center. So if you go to the little photo, or if you don't have a photo, it's just a little, kind of icon up there on the top where it says Me. Whenever you get stuck, just go to the Me, and all the things that you really need are there, from settings to the Help Center. And you click on the little arrow, and the drop-down bar will show you the Help Center. And then you just can type in, have a duplicate account, need to close it, how do I invite people to connect with me, what should I say in my summary? Whatever it is, most of the information is there. So it's a good idea to get familiar with that. So again, before, kind of back to getting started, before you begin actually updating your LinkedIn profile, in other words, typing in the content, once again, click on the little photo labeled Me. Remember, that's a really important thing to know, to go to that little photo or the little icon that says Me, and click on Settings and Privacy. Click on Privacy and scroll down, and just get to know how the privacy settings work. I counted the settings, I think it was yesterday or the day before, because I was helping a client with his LinkedIn profile, and I think there's about 12 different privacy settings. So those are really important because people can get a little bit paranoid about the fact that they may be working and they don't want their boss to see that they're on LinkedIn. And by the way, there's no validity to that anymore at all, because people aren't using LinkedIn just for looking for work. But if you're nervous about that, there's a specific setting that you can go to and change it so that people can't see if you make updates on your profile or if you look at people, and things like that. So definitely get familiar with the Help Center and then the privacy settings. So this is actually my profile with my little face there, and there's something. Well, so you can see that it has my name. It has sort of what the headline is, and I just sort of listed all the things I do, which isn't necessarily recommended. You'll see my company name, where I went to school, what geographic area I'm in, and it stops showing how many connections you have once you hit 500. But you have a dashboard that you can access to actually see how many connections you have if you're interested in that. And again, it doesn't really matter how many connections you have. It matters that you're being somewhat planful about who you're connecting with, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then there's a little thing called the Profile Strength Meter. Again, if you go to the Me icon with your little picture and you select the View, you select the View Profile, you will see that when you move your cursor over the little meter, it'll tell you which steps you've completed. So if you're not as familiar with LinkedIn, you'll know what you still need to fill in, whether it's your education or additional employment or adding a photo. So if you just click on the drop-down icon, and there's drop-down icons everywhere on LinkedIn, and they're very easy to access, you will get information about the next profile strength completion to take. So you know, some of these things are a little silly, but you get something that's called an all-star profile rating when your entire meter is full, so to speak, and you've loaded up your profile. You can just tap on your picture and look at the profile strength meter and then figure out what you need to add next. And by the way, the thought behind the profile strength meter is that the stronger your profile is, the more likely it is that you will be viewed and that people will look at your profile. So I just covered that. So now let's talk about the headline. Your headline is one of the 3 or 4 most important parts of LinkedIn. So your headline is something that is very useful for, you know, not only someone who's reading it so that they can see and understand what you do. Like someone today I talked to on the phone, and she wants me to help her with her profile, and she has lots of different and she knows it, lots of different phrases and words in her headline. And none of them they don't seem seamless. They don't seem like they relate to each other. And so as a result, it just causes some confusion. And so we kind of talked about what would make most sense about, you know, putting in her headline. So it always needs to be keyword focused. You'll hear me talk about keywords quite a bit in our time together tonight, or if you're on Pacific time, it's in the afternoon. But it's not a job title, although if you are working currently, it is a default choice to use your job title. So if you've got like a pretty juicy job title, then I do recommend, and that's kind of where you want to stay if you're looking for a job, then that is what I do recommend that you default to. And it's also important to remember that you've got up to 120 characters to use in your headline. So that's a lot of characters, and you might as well load it up as long as what you're putting as a headline makes sense. And it is important to be strategic about that. One thing you can do is if you aren't working and you don't know what you want your headline to be, look at other people's profiles and see what they're using and see if there's something that resonates for you. And you can use special characters in your headline as well. So then we go to LinkedIn asks for your basic information. So what country do you live in? What's your zip code, which is optional. An industry is required. The thing I don't like about the industry field is it's rather limited in that you must choose from the industries that LinkedIn provides. So when you start putting in your industry, if you type in banana picking, that's not an industry that will be on LinkedIn. And obviously I'm picking an absurd one, but, you're not going to be able to put banana picking. So you're going to have to see if there's, wholesale grocery or produce or something more like that that's going to be more universal. I get this question, I can't tell you how many times, do I have to put a photo? And people seem to whine when they ask that question hysterically. Yes, it is really, really, really recommended that you add a photo. And there's a couple things to know about this. Photos are particularly useful. First of all, we operate in a very visual world, especially online. And so people want to look at you. They want to see, they're not judging you. They just want to see what you look like. If you've got a more common name, it's even better to have a photo because if when you type in someone's name and type LinkedIn after them, let's say Julie Jansen, believe it or not, there's tons of Julie Jansens. And so it helps when you see a photo to get an idea of what the person looks like and who they are. It's such a tiny little thumbnail photo that all you really need, you don't even need a professional headshot. You just need a decent photo with white background. And yes, it needs to be current, just like a photo on a dating website. And it's going to be from shoulders up. And I definitely recommend color, although black and white is absolutely fine as well. And it's really easy to upload. Your summary is another extremely significant part of your LinkedIn profile. So it's vital because it's the one place really where you can be creative. You can be a little unusual. You can use first-person tense or you can, be a little more professional and talk about yourself as if, someone else is talking about you, describing your experience. And in this section, you have 2,000 characters, and the first couple sentences really need to grab whoever's looking at your profile. And it's the one thing that, while people can't generally see the entire summary until they click on See More on the bottom of the summary, the first 2 to 3 sentences they can read, and that's going to either grab them or make them, scroll through and sign off. So I really, really can't reiterate enough how important this section is. And I've seen plenty of LinkedIn profiles where the person doesn't even have a summary. So if you're using LinkedIn for job search, or you're using it to find business, or for people to find business with you, just some tips of, be concise, be comprehensive. I like bulleting specialties. Stay authentic. Be true to who you are. Be on brand. Don't be too wacky. That's for other sites, not LinkedIn, because, again, remember, it's a professional business website. What I like to do, I write a lot of clients' LinkedIn profiles, and what I do is I create it in Word first, and then I spell check it, and then I cut it and paste it into LinkedIn, in the summary especially. And I can't say this enough, hit save, hit save, hit save. And you've got to scroll down to see the save button, and in some cases it can be hard to find, but you've got to do that or you'll lose everything. So I've mentioned keywords a few times. Not only are they important in your headline, and not only are they important in your summary, but they play an extremely crucial part in being found by people who don't know you on LinkedIn. And so this is especially important for job seekers. And again, you can format, you can use bullets, you can use dashes, you can use asterisks or hyphens or whatever characters you want to, make it look a little bit more interesting. So then what LinkedIn asks you is to start listing your work experience. So they have a very boring, basic format that you need to fill in. What they do is ask you to list your work experience chronologically. So it'll be your most current or recent job that you'll list. You just have to click plus add experience, put in the title always goes first on LinkedIn for whatever reason, and that's opposite of what is on a resume. Then the company name, and if the company name is a company that is recognizable, it'll populate with the company's little logo. And then it'll ask for your time period. I don't generally put months. I usually just put years, but if it's like an internship or a consulting gig, then, maybe adding months is a good idea. You don't have to add the location, and you don't have to add a description, but why would you leave those blank? So if a location, use the broader locations rather than, like, I live in Stamford, Connecticut. Instead of putting Stamford, Connecticut, I use Greater New York. And then just a brief description. You don't need to regurgitate whatever achievements are on your resume unless it's really important to you, but you don't want those descriptions to be too long. And then once again, hit that blue save button. So here's an example of, well, I don't know, it's kind of hard for those of you who are online, an example of my work experience. So my work experience is my own business, which I've been doing since 1999. So, but it's just a brief description, as you can see, the dates, and then a little more information. Now we jump to another really important keywords section. So Microsoft bought LinkedIn a couple years ago, and I don't know why, but they have since actually, in a good way, changed this section. It used to be called Skills and Endorsements. Actually, they didn't even have endorsements. It was just skills. Now it's called Featured Skills and Endorsements, and you have the ability to add up to 50 skills here. And these are not just skills. They're mostly technical words, and these are going to be the keywords that help you to be found by people who are hiring, by either recruiters or hiring managers. And so the trick here is that, first of all, let me just go to this next slide. When you type in a skill, LinkedIn will suggest a relevant keyword. So say, for example, you're typing in strategic, and you're typing it in, and all of a sudden the drop-down will show all the keywords. And by the way, keywords are not just one word. They're usually one or two, maybe three words, and it'll show you all the words that start with the word strategic. And you'll look at the one that makes the most sense given your experience and what you're trying to demonstrate to people who are viewing your profile, and you will use that. So you do not want to make up keywords because it will not help you in search results if you do that. So it will be much more likely to show up in searches if you use a skill that they've recommended to you. And then your contacts, I'm not really even sure after all this time why this is a useful feature. I'm not a big fan of it, as are my colleagues, but your contacts can endorse you for skills. But people I notice just randomly will endorse people and not necessarily even know. Like I remember for years people were endorsing me for team building, and I haven't done team building in years, so I have no idea why that is. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to that, but I would populate the skills, and the skills where you receive the most endorsements are always listed first. And the skills where people didn't endorse you will be listed in the order of which they were added. So there isn't any way at this moment to make a skill without an endorsement appear higher than skills that have endorsements. So the only thing you can do is delete a skill where someone has endorsed you, but usually it's going to be a pretty important skill, so you might not want to do that. And you can X out a skill and drag and rearrange your skills, the ones that don't have endorsements. And then the other thing that LinkedIn has done in the last 3 weeks, actually, is that they've now organized the skills in little buckets like technical skills and personal qualities and things like that. But that has nothing to do with you. They just automatically organize them for you. Okay, so then, of course, you want to add any education that you have. You can put as much or as little information as you want. If you've got something notable, for people that are a little bit more experienced and they don't want to put the year that they graduated because they're a little self-conscious about their age, you can leave the year off. You don't have to put the year that you graduated. You do have to put years for work experience, but not for education. And so there's all sorts of things that you can add in there. What I generally recommend is just what was the school, what was the degree that you got, maybe if there's any interesting information about what you studied, that could be good, and any special activities that you were involved in. Okay, so now what LinkedIn has done is they've taken all these little categories and put them under something called accomplishments, and that you can find these accomplishments on the right-hand side if you're looking at your profile and you're looking at where your photo is or should be. You'll see accomplishments, and in that section, you can add any of the following things. Publications. So I've written books, so I have my books listed, my ebooks listed. Certifications. Certifications are really important. People look at those depending on what field you're in. Any patents. Not a lot of people have patents, but if you do, that's pretty special. Any courses you've taken, honors and awards. I think I've gotten a couple awards recently, and I have added those. Test scores, languages are a good thing, and then organizations that you are affiliated with. So I do tons of work with Cancer and Careers. I'm not an employee, but I have a whole blurb on Cancer and Careers on my site. And then interests are not what it sounds like. Interests are the LinkedIn groups that you have joined that we talked about earlier, and any people or companies that you are following. So, it looks like I was on a board of the Computer Center for Visually Impaired, so I follow them for many years. Looks like I'm a member of a training and development group, a national career development group, LinkedIn writers group, et cetera. So it just lists, it kind of helps people look at you and see, what are you interested in? Who are you following? It could be individuals and it could be groups. Okay, so recommendations are really important as well. I know I keep saying everything's important, but again, it's headline, featured skills and endorsements, summary, and recommendations are, especially if they're current, which I highly suggest because people read them because they're interesting, because someone just wrote it. They're not, it's not a script. So what you want to do is someone does have to be on LinkedIn, a member of LinkedIn, to write a recommendation for you. It's not like a reference, which is different. So you really want to, if you don't have any of these or you don't have current ones, you want to kind of be thoughtful about who you can ask to be a recommendation for you. It's always great if it's like a previous boss or manager. Obviously, you can't ask your current manager, probably, or a former colleague or a client or a vendor. So those are great to have, and you can just request, go to their, and it has to be a first degree connection. So you go to the first degree connection and request a recommendation, and then they have to write a recommendation in alignment with the job that they know you from. So whatever job they might have worked with you in, it'll identify that, and then you can ask them. And you can, a lot of my clients will ask people offline for a recommendation, but there's a really easy way to ask someone for a recommendation on LinkedIn, and then they can just go through the process of writing it for you. You do have to approve your recommendation. It's not something that is automatically posted. And then I mentioned that you have a dashboard. So this dashboard shows you like your statistics. So it shows you how many people viewed your profile in a period of time, how many people looked at your posts. So posting content is another part of it that's, just slightly more sophisticated. So I'm not getting into that in depth, but I'm quoted in articles a lot, so I can see that whenever I uploaded this, it was 928 people had looked at my posts, and then it shows you how many people have done a search where you've come up in their search. So that's really interesting. And then there's also something on here where you can connect with recruiters and let recruiters know that you're open to any opportunities. And so recruiters can see your profile marked as open to new opportunities. It'll really double your chance of receiving messages from recruiters, and you'll be more likely to be surfaced in recruiter searches that match whatever kind of job you're looking for. So if you're in any kind of job search, I would definitely click that you're open to that. Put that. Mine's on off because I'm not, looking for work, but I would definitely put it on that, on. Okay. So remember that LinkedIn, one of the wonderful things about LinkedIn is it's a living document. So unlike a resume where it's kind of laborious to update it in some ways, your LinkedIn profile, as long as you change the privacy settings so that people can't see you making changes and don't get those updates, then you can update it as often as you want. And you want to, be selective about who you invite to connect and whom you accept invitations from, but you don't have to just accept invitations from people you only know. I mean, what I do is I do get a lot of invitations to connect with people on LinkedIn because of what I do for a living, and so I will, if I see someone that invites me to connect, I'll say, hey, and a lot of people unfortunately use a default generic invitation. I really recommend if you're inviting someone to connect, you're picking them out individually, you should write a quick little customized invitation. But I just say, hey, Kat, who's our operator, I see that you sent me an invitation. Have we met before, or do we have people in common? And you can also look and see what connections you have in common with that person. And if the person never responds, usually I don't connect with them, but it has everything to do with what they do and who they are, and if they interest you in connecting with them. Posting status updates, I mentioned that earlier. That could be, posting an article that you read, the link for that, something that you wrote, forwarding a blog post, just saying something. That's a good idea, but again, remember that this is all very professionally focused. And while we all know that LinkedIn is a wonderful tool for looking for a job, the truth is you don't want to be too overt or look too desperate. So we don't say in a headline, seeking a new job, must work immediately, and I'm joking a little bit, but you definitely don't want to be that overt about it. But you do want to drop hints that, you're available and interested, especially with recruiters. When people do ask you for help through LinkedIn, when they want to meet someone, try to respond to them. I'm kind of still surprised by professionals I know who are on LinkedIn, and I'm asking them to help out a client, and I'm very selective about doing that, and they just never respond to me. There's something called a LinkedIn Open Networker. It's called a Lion, and that's someone who just connects with anybody and everybody, and their whole game is how many people they can connect with. And then this is one of my favorite tips, is spend 15 or 20 minutes a day on LinkedIn searching for people or companies. The more time you spend on LinkedIn, the more comfortable you're going to get, and the more that you will, not feel as intimidated by it. So I'll turn it back over to Nicole and for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie. Well, this is certainly a lot of information to take in for everyone. I hope this presentation gave you all some good things to think about as you're building your LinkedIn profile and becoming better oriented with the site. As you can see on this slide, we also have a number of other resources that you might find helpful. First, if you have specific questions about your resume, you can visit our website and upload it to our free resume review service. Julie is actually the career coach who reviews the resumes, so this program is a great opportunity for you to get personalized feedback directly from her on how to make your resume stand out. We also offer free career coaching on our website, where Julie, along with other volunteer career coaches, will answer any questions that you might have about work in cancer. And on our website, you can download or order a free copy of our Job Search Toolkit, which has 60 pages of job search advice, sample resumes, and more. And we also have a Looking for Work section on our website. This has articles on conducting a career change, informational interviews, and building your online image. And finally, we run a number of free events, as you all know, both in person and online throughout the year. Here are a few of our upcoming Balancing Work and Cancer webinars. And of course, we also do in person. So we have our national conference taking place in New York City on June 22nd, and our West Coast conference will take place on October 13th in Los Angeles. Please note there are travel scholarships available for both of these conferences. As you can see, the national conference one will be closing this Friday. So if you're interested, I encourage you to apply. And then for more information on events, check out www.cancerandcareers.org. And now it's time to open up the call for questions. So our operator, Kat, will now explain how the Q&A works. Kat?
Thank you so much. The floor is now open for questions. If you do have a question, you may press star 1 on your telephone keypad at this time. Questions will be taken in the order that they're received. If at any time your question has been answered, you can remove yourself from the queue by pressing 1. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it's star 1. And our first question comes from Amy. Amy, go ahead.
Hi, thanks so much for all the great information. I wanted to ask, and I've heard different opinions about this already, what do you think is the best way to handle having a LinkedIn presence or not if you are actively searching for jobs in two possible different career areas?
Yeah, I do get that question, Amy, more and more frequently as people are doing so many different things or have, different focuses. And it's tricky because LinkedIn is rather inflexible about being too creative. So I think that that's something that you would address in your headline and in your summary. And just like, would you be able to tell me what the two focuses are?
Yes, sure. One is in my pre-cancer career, let's say, which is as a legal assistant in a very specific area of law, which is intellectual property, and that requires a lot of detail on your resume that, I've done this, I've done that, I know how to do these documents and those documents, and that, like a lot of detail, so that like already kind of maxes out people's attention span. And the other area is what I was studying in grad school when I got the cancer, which is more of a forensic psychology, social services type of job.
Yeah, so the challenge is that it's almost like you would have to make a decision, but say weave in the fact that you've got a strong legal background as a paralegal and blah, 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 and you have a very, this is the wrong word, but a strong interest in forensic psychology and potentially these words. And I would, in the keywords, featured skills and endorsement section, I would mix the keywords that go with both of those professions in that case, because remember, it's about being scanned, really. And then you're going to have to come up with like a creative headline that speaks, I think, to both of those, And I'm struggling with thinking about what that would be off the top of my head, but I think you're limiting yourself if you just talk about being a paralegal or if you just talk about forensic psychology,
Yeah, that's why I'm not using it at all at the moment.
Yeah, but I think you can find a way to combine. Are you working right now at all?
No, I had a temp job that ended in December.
Right, so the good news is you could combine the two in some way because they're not so far apart that you would combine them in the headline and talk about, and you don't have work experience in forensic psychology, correct?
I do.
Oh, you do?
I have
okay.
experience in both of these areas.
So even better that you can say experience in both, in this area and this area, a little bit of detail for each one, and you can kind of do forensic psychology, whatever, social workers, / paralegal, and I think it actually would be kind of interesting and catchy, And again, I'm not able to think of a snappy headline right now, but I think that that's definitely possible to create. And I think you're just doing yourself a disservice by not using LinkedIn.
So far, all the feedback I've had is, well, what are you trying to do? This is very confusing, and if I have both.
But I think it's how you wordsmith it, because I have created profiles for people. Like if you look at me and all the different things I do in my business, people do say, you do all that? And it's like, yeah, let me explain. Here's an example, here's an example, here's an example. So it's how you word it. You probably need someone to help you write it, I would say.
Maybe.
It's very doable.
Both areas find it very undesirable that, if you're going to get something in that area and then go do that.
Well, that's their problem, though. You just need one, right? So, you need to find someone who will find that appealing. Or you make a decision about which one you're going to put in your headline, and you still mention both in your summary. And you definitely still mix up the keywords, to represent both areas. So, not to dwell on that. But it is tricky, I give you that, because of the way LinkedIn is formatted. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other?
Do you have anyone else on the phone?
Our next question comes from Layla. Go ahead, Layla.
I haven't found that LinkedIn keeps my information even after I go save a zillion times, save for each time I put something new in. And
Layla, it's Julie. Hey.
Oh, I think you dropped.
Oh, we lost
Sorry.
It?
Just hit star 1 again.
All right. Well, while we wait for Layla.
Here she is. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Layla, go ahead.
I haven't found that LinkedIn keeps my new information and takes out my old information even after I go save a million times for each individual post, each individual deletion, and for the whole section. And also, my last job was grocery retail, but I only did it for a year, and I did other kinds of careers much longer than this one. And how much time should be devoted on a LinkedIn to other careers, because grocery retail was my last, but I spent so much longer, more than 10 times longer in teaching, K through 12 as a sub, and also clerical, and I was volunteer coordinator, and I even did security guarding.
Layla, we know each other, so, and
I know.
We're going to address this. So, but let me just address I think it would be helpful for everybody else on the call. You just remember how I kept saying during this webinar, you have to hit the blue save button. You have to hit the blue save button. And
I saved it a million times.
It does.
So many times I try to save something and it wouldn't save, or I try to delete something. When you want to change the dates, and I tried this even with an instructor. When you want to change, although I greatly appreciate what you're doing now, but I tried it with an instructor to delete the dates on something which was they gave incorrect. I had written incorrect dates. I tried to change it zillions of times, even with a LinkedIn instructor, and was unable to change the dates, unable to delete the information, unable to save the new information, even though. But mainly the dates can't be saved, and it took a zillion times before I could change anything at all. It won't let me change it.
Sometimes you just have to reset the browser, like use a different browser, or sign out and sign back in. Because I've had that problem once in a while, not very frequently, and so it's just a matter of. And I'm going to help you with your LinkedIn profile anyway, because we talked about it today.
Right.
Yeah, so don't worry about that, and you don't want to confuse everybody and think it's impossible to save, because it really is possible to save. It's just, sometimes the internet is tricky, and it wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, just like people do sometimes. So you kind of have to, be patient, and I'll help you with that. But it really, truly is get out of it, go sign back in, turn off your computer, turn it back on, go use it. If you're using Google Chrome, use a different, browser, Firefox or whatever. And so it's kind of those tricks, but it does generally work pretty effectively. And then the whole thing about your jobs, we've talked about this quite a bit because I saw you in San Francisco. It's just a matter of, like, we're going to consolidate everything, and we're going to make your headline not crazy like it is with all the things, and we'll do that.
Yeah. Okay.
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 Okay, it looks like we have time for one more question. I see one in the chat box from Mark. What is the best way to address gaps in work experience, for example, due to cancer or a caregiver for someone with cancer, if you haven't worked in a year or more?
So to address a gap, you don't really need to address a gap on LinkedIn. Some people are nervous about gaps, so they leave the end date to present, because they don't want to acknowledge that they have a gap, but it really isn't something that I think you need to worry about, very candidly. It's just a matter of making sure that your LinkedIn profile is as compelling and strong as it can be. And if you don't put an end date with a job, like say you left a job in 2016, then you're going to be asked the question, are you still there? And then it's up to you to say, well, no, I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile, or no, I left in 2016. And in my opinion, that makes it that much more uncomfortable. So I would just put an end date.
And of course, if you are concerned about any gaps on your resume, you can submit your resume to our resume review service, where Julie will help you out with the gaps on there. It looks like we are at the top of the hour now, so I think we're going to have to wrap up. I really do hope that you all found this webinar valuable, and we greatly appreciate your feedback. So we'll be emailing an online evaluation tomorrow prior to 5 p.m. We appreciate your time to fill this out so that we can best develop this program to meet your needs. It's not only very helpful in shaping future calls, but also in continuing to receive the funding for us to have these kinds of programs. If we were unable to get to your question during the call, please feel free to email us at cancerandcareers@cew.org, and we'll be sure to get those answers for you. I've also left up the Ceu Requirements slide just so you guys can see what's required in order to obtain CEUs. And that's all from our end. So thank you so much, Julie, for all of your insights and information, and thank you all for attending. I hope you have a great evening.
You too.